Hi everybody, this is Ibarionex from the Candid Frame, and this week I want to talk about the moment. When I take a look at a lot of the photographs, I'm appreciating things that the photographer is doing with light, with composition, with tone, with line, shape, even gesture. But what I'm really looking for is something special, something unexpected, something surprising. And sometimes it's something that the photographer can't anticipate. They may have a feel for a scene and the potential of a setting to produce a certain kind of photograph. But it isn't until that moment happens that the photographer really discovers whether or not they have something special. And if you take a look at the photographs that are commonly in our Flickr Pool or in Instagram, some of those photographs may look beautiful because of light, because of composition, because of framing, all of those things. But there's no there. There's nothing actually happening, especially when it comes to street photography. We'll see a lot of photographs where people are walking through a scene and everything about it may be aesthetically beautiful, but there isn't that moment. So I chose 3 images that I think aptly demonstrate what I'm talking about. Okay, here we have a shot by Kevin Ballance. We don't have any XF data on this shot. Now, this shot is pretty simple. It's a shot of this woman in this doorway to a store that has this closed sign. I'm not exactly sure what kind of store it is. From what I can see, there seems to be a variety of different knickknacks, maybe some sort of general store. And the moment for me is her peeking her head out of the door and saying to something to someone who's out of frame. And immediately this image begs to ask the question, what's happening? What's the story? What's this moment about? And that really sort of piqued my interest because I've seen scenes like this in my life where someone is opening a door, putting their head out and sort of yelling or calling out to someone. And that's what this moment evokes for me. And I think the shot is interesting graphically because of the lines that are created by the frames of the doorway, the door itself. I like the little splashes of color, the red that repeats itself from these sort of flags here to the red of the sign here that connotes the hours of operation. Usually I don't like signage, but the sign here that says closed says something important about this particular moment. But it's the way that this woman is partially sticking her head out of that doorway and saying something to someone, and the expression that she has in her face that really makes me stop. It makes me look at this moment that really is nothing is special. There's nothing dramatic. This is not like a sports action shot where you're photographing the peak of action and allowing that to sort of speak for the moment. This is sort of a nothing moment, but it is something that sort of piques my interest. And I think that moments like this get lost to a lot of us as photographers just because it isn't obvious. It's fairly quiet, and I especially like the unusual framing that Kevin here used to compose this shot, because he could have composed this shot so that the woman was perfectly centered in the frame, but there's something about the upward angle and the odd framing that really makes this work. Now, he may have photographed this from the hip in order not to call the attention to the woman that he was making the photograph, or it may have been more purposeful framing on his part. I don't know what the story is with respect to that, but I think the result is really, really, really interesting because this image has something to it that goes beyond lighting and framing and color and all those things. There's a genuine moment here that arrests my attention, and for me that makes it very interesting. Now here's a shot by Bjane Levine. This was shot with a Sony A9 at 200th of a second, f6.3, ISO 1000. Now the moment for me here is the way the wind blows this woman's hair across her face. Now if you take a look at our Flickr pool, you will see thousands of pictures of people walking down a street, and most of those shots don't have anything happening beyond that. It's just people walking down a street in New York, in Los Angeles, in Tokyo, in London, and it's just that. And it may have some interesting things such as, interesting characters, interesting backgrounds, maybe good color, great light and shadow, but there's no moment. And for me, that moment is the way the wind throws this woman's hair across her face. For me, that makes the shot. The shot has some interesting line, particularly produced by the line of the crosswalk and the sidewalk here, that creates these nice graphic lines that help to lead us to her here. Thankfully, there are no white cars in the background. We have these dark cars here that don't pull away our attention from the woman, whose jacket itself produces one of the lightest tones and colors within the scene, which helps guide our eye to her. The color of her hair and even her handbag complement some of the colors in the background, all of which play really nicely. We have this figure here on the left that is about to step off of the curb into the street. And again, thankfully, he's not wearing a red jacket or a white coat that again would pull our attention away from her. All of our attention is on her. And if there had been no wind, it would have just been another shot of someone, stepping out from the crosswalk onto the curb and moving to wherever they were going to. But this moment with the wind kicking up and throwing her hair across her face makes the moment. And I love it. I love the fact that it's something as simple as just wind kicking up hair that makes the shot a little more interesting. Because if you show me hundreds and hundreds of pictures of people walking down the street, I'm going to be hunting for something a little bit different. And oftentimes we're looking for light and shadow or color or something like that. But this is the sort of thing that I'm often hoping to encounter when I'm out there. That unexpected surprise, that thing that I could not have anticipated or imagined would happen, that when it does, transforms a shot. And I think we always have to be kind of vigilant for moments like this, because it really is the stuff that can make a shot really, really special. Now here we have a shot by Herr Bertt, no EXIF data here. And again, we have a picture of someone walking down the street, but the moment here is a fairly obvious one. It's him bringing his hand to his eye to press into the corner of his eyes, and he has this cigarette in his hand, and he looks like, as here described in his title for the shot, stress. You feel this guy is experiencing a lot of stress in this shot. And it's that gesture, the way his thumb is really digging deeply into the socket of his eye that really make the shot. Again, compare it to the other images that are in the Flickr pool of people walking down the street where there's nothing happening. And you can see why this gesture really stands out. You got the great light in this case. It creates this light and shadow, creates this point of contrast. It throws this woman in the background into shadow, which is really important just because she doesn't draw our attention to the point of distraction. We also have this sign here on here, but thankfully the text is fairly small that it isn't the kind of distraction that it normally would be. But the one nice thing about the blue of that sign is that it's complemented by some of the blue tones here in the background. I always like the mirroring of color or shapes in a frame. But again, I come back to that gesture. And one thing that I'm noticing right now that also adds to this feeling of stress is that you can see the corner of his mouth and you can see his teeth. And it seems like he's like gritting his teeth. Whatever he was going through at this moment is just clearly expressed with his hands, his facial expression. It's just this tenseness in his body. And for me, that evokes a moment. And that's what makes this shot, I think, really, really special. And you can see with all the three images that I've showed you here, there's no big action happening. We're not talking about, a running back catching a football or a pitcher throwing a fastball towards home plate. Nothing that dramatic, nothing that explosive. But these moments, help to elevate a shot from being completely mundane into something special. And the challenge in being able to create these pictures is being present enough to be able to recognize them when they happen and being quick enough with the camera in order to capture it. But believe me, these kinds of shots take a bit of patience. They happen all the time, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the resulting images are created all the time, just because the photographers aren't paying attention for moments like this. And if they do see it, by the time they see it, it's too late to capture the photograph. I often talk about slowing down, about being patient, about really being able to observe a scene and getting a sense that something is about to play out. And when you're able to get into that space, that's when pictures like this can happen. At least can happen with a little bit of consistency, in that you're not completely relying on luck in order to make them happen. So when the next time you go out there, try to slow down and try to wake yourself up to the idea of capturing a moment, and more than just simply pressing the shutter release button just to capture something, anything, and hoping that luck will somehow bless you with a great photograph. Really observe and take everything in and try to see things as they play out, and hopefully result in you being able to capture images like this. Hope that was helpful to you. If you're discovering the Candid Frame for the first time because of these YouTube videos, you should check out the Candid Frame podcast, in which I feature conversations with photographers from all over the world. We've just celebrated our 400th episode, and we did so with an interview with Arthur Meyerson, a Texas-based photographer who has been a commercial, editorial, fine art photographer, and he just released his latest book, The Journey, in which he talks about his own personal journey as a photographer. Arthur is an amazingly talented color photographer. He is a photographer that uses a lot of the aesthetics of the street in a lot of his commercial work, and you'll really love it. If you're not familiar with his work, you should definitely go to his site and check it out. But listen to the interview. You'll find some wonderful insights into what it takes to not only create great pictures, but to be able to create a career doing something that you love. And you can check it out at thecandidframe.com. And if you like these videos and you find them helpful, please give us a like, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.